Before Mr. Duncan was selected by President Obama as Education Secretary, he was the Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago Public Schools for 7 years, becoming the longest-serving big city education superintendent in the country. As CEO, he worked with education reformers, teachers, principals, and business leaders to raise education standards and performance. Before joining the Chicago Public Schools, Mr. Duncan ran a nonprofit education foundation called the Ariel Education Initiative, which helped fund college education for inner-city children. Mr. Duncan, on behalf of NSTA, we would like to welcome you to our national conference. Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Secretary of Education, Mr. Arne Duncan.
Sit down, son. Thank you so much. I see we strategically put the Chicago team up front, so that was great prep, great planning. Good morning, and thank you so much for inviting me here today. As you can imagine, it's been a pretty eventful couple of weeks, from starting a new job, to moving my family, to passing a massive stimulus bill that includes over $100 billion in new funding for education. And now, just when I thought I could really catch my breath and get focused on the President's bold education agenda, the NCAA basketball tournament is starting. The stimulus bill is a historic opportunity to lay the groundwork for a generation of educational reform. And I want to talk to you about that for a few minutes before discussing science education. This is a time of both economic crisis and I would argue historic educational crisis, but it is also a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a momentous opportunity to dramatically improve the quality of education around our country. And we've been calling it the perfect storm for reform. We have a president and a first lady, we're calling the Barack effect, who are passionate about public education, and they are the living embodiment of what a great education can do. We have bipartisan support on Capitol Hill. We have more great strategies in schools, in classrooms, in districts, and states around the country than ever before. And as I mentioned earlier, for the first time ever, $100 billion to work with to try and dramatically improve student outcomes. As you know, the primary goal of the stimulus package is to save jobs. But the larger goal, the critical goal, is to drive a set of reforms that we believe will transform public education in America. There are 4 strategies that we're focused on with a laser-like focus. First, raising the bar, dramatically raising standards, common, college-ready, career-ready, internationally benchmarked standards. Our students aren't competing down the block or in the district or in the states for jobs anymore. Our students are competing with children in India and China, and they need to know all the way along their educational trajectory whether they're on track to be successful and win that competition or whether they're not. We need comprehensive data systems so we can track student progress all the way through and not lose children. It's so important that we have real data about them. We want to be able to track students back to their teachers and teachers back to their schools of education. We're going to continue to dramatically improve teacher quality and find ways to get the best and brightest into our classrooms and trying to do a much better job of supporting that great talent once it comes in. I think we can get dramatically better at recruiting that great talent, but you all have lived this, the ability to retain great talent and to listen and to pay attention and have great mentoring and great induction and professional development that's meaningful. That's so critically important to have so that our teachers don't burn out and don't leave us. And then finally, we really want to focus on those schools that chronically underperform and think about what we can do transformationally to do something dramatically better for those children and not continue to simply perpetuate a status quo that isn't good enough. The law requires states to commit to these reforms in order to get the first round of funding and to begin moving towards them for the second round of funding. For those states that move fastest and the furthest, we have a $5 billion Race to the Top fund. And we will use that money to incent a handful of states that are already pushing the envelope. We've had a race to the bottom, I think, over the past few years. We absolutely have to reverse that and create a race to the top and have a set of states step up and lead the entire country to where we need to go. Now you're probably wondering just how much of this $100 billion will go to science education. But if I told you right now, you probably wouldn't listen to the rest of the speech. So we'll hold that thought for a moment or two. Let me begin by saying that science education is critical, is absolutely critical to our broader effort to restore American leadership in education worldwide. And I want to start with a little story. Last week, I had my first opportunity to testify on Capitol Hill about the President's proposed education agenda. As you know, this is both an opportunity for me to testify, but it's also an important opportunity for elected officials to speak. And several of the members of the House Budget Committee spoke passionately about science education. In fact, they reached all the way back to Sputnik to affirm their commitment to science in the classroom. On the one hand, it's good to remember where the modern era of science education began. But on the other hand, it also reminded me of how much further we still have to go. America won the space race, but in many ways, American education lost the science race. A decade ago, the TIMSS benchmarking study showed that our best districts could compete with anyone in the world, but our worst districts, which of course were located in our low-income, primarily minority communities, were on par, not with the best in the world, but with third world countries. This kind of extreme inequity in education is not unique to science, but it has enormous repercussions in the workforce, where science-based industries are desperate for skilled workers. Studies show that interest in science is strong in high school, but it drops dramatically once the students reach college. We have to change that. We need more people in engineering. We need them in healthcare and in technology and in the green energy space. And importantly, we need them in the classroom. Too many middle school students are being taught by a generalist, and you guys know so well you can't teach well what you don't know yourself. We've known about this challenge for years, but we haven't done enough to address it. Part of the problem is the labor pool simply isn't there. Too much of the great talent goes into other areas, and that's especially true among women and minorities who are underrepresented in many of the science fields. Another part of the problem is that math and science teachers leave the profession in greater numbers than others because there are better job opportunities out there. Not everyone is as dedicated to teaching as all of you, and I want to take a moment and thank all of you for your extraordinary commitment. We must find ways to be more creative, more innovative, and think in new ways about these challenges that we face every single day. We need to respond to the market by paying more to teachers in high-need subjects like math and science. I thought you'd like that. I'm a big believer in differential pay. I want to reward excellence by paying teachers and principals who do an extraordinary job in the classroom. I want to reward them for going into struggling schools and school districts. That's where the challenge is. If you're going to take on a tough job, you should absolutely be rewarded for that commitment. I want to incent schools to attract and support great talent in the STEM subjects. It's the right thing to do for those teachers because it's the right thing to do for the children and the communities who have been historically underserved. That has to change. In his education address last week, the President called for a lot of things: eliminating charter caps, expanding performance pay, extending the school day, the school week, and the school year, increasing parental responsibility, and ultimately dramatically expanding access and opportunity to college. That's a very, very aggressive agenda. Some say it's too aggressive, but I would argue we simply don't have a choice. I'm just so grateful that we have a president who is willing to fight for schools and fight for our children. Given that he is facing 2 wars and the worst economy since the Depression, it is absolutely remarkable to me that day after day, week after week, he keeps coming back to education. He understands that we must educate our way to a better economy. He understands that the nation that out-teaches us today will out-compete us tomorrow. He understands the nation not only needs its poets and its scholars to give us words and wisdom, but also its inventors and engineers to design the new cell phone and rebuild the levees here in New Orleans. Moreover, he is a president who will not allow scientific research to be held hostage to a political agenda. Whether it's global warming, evolution, or stem cell research, science will be honored, it will be respected, and supported by this administration. The President sent a strong signal when he picked a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, Stephen Chu, to be our energy